Okay, so Siman Chof Hey Sif Vov, the first Siman in Hilchos Tefiilin. So interesting and important halachas. So we know that when you open up your bag of tefillin, you take out the shel yad first, and then you take out the shel rosh. Right? You do the shel yad, then the shel rosh. But what happens if says the Mishnah Berurah, says the Mechaber in Sivov, im poga b'shel rosh techila? What happens if you take out the tefillin and you take out the tefillin shel rosh first? Tzorich laha'aveh al oisa hamitzvah v'yaniach al shel yad techila v'achkach shel rosh. What do? You don't put on the shel rosh. You have to put it down, and then you put on the shel yad, and then you put on the shel rosh afterwards. Ein mavirin al mitzvahs. So we'll see the Mishnah Berurah says that the fulfillment of the mitzvah v'kshartem la'is al yadecha trumps, and you've got to put the shel yad on first. Says the Mishnah Berurah, poga, dafka poga. But he says, interesting, dafka if you did it. What if you got confused and you put the shel rosh on first? Or you saw the shel yad slip down. You don't have to actually take the shel rosh off. You messed up, you made a mistake. And you quickly just make sure you put the shel yad on. Check out the Bir Halacha. There's a long Bir Halacha there. This is a good mitzvah pshetel. This is a classic stuff. But if you look at the last line of the Bir Halacha, he concludes, Al Kain, Nira Poshet Shahadinim Rabbeinu Hataz, or Komesh Kosvedi Rabba Demaida Hava Hava, that what you did, if you put the Shel Rosh on first by mistake, then you did it, you messed up. But V'yimahen, you should hurry, Lohniach HaShel Yad, and put the Shel Yad on quickly, Kadei Sheikhaim Kolzman Shebein Enecho, Yushtayim. That you should have the two, both the Shel Yad and the Shel Rosh on first. So again, just to summarize, that if, of course, you've got to set it up in a way that you take the Shel Yad first, and then you put the Shel Rosh on. If by mistake you took out the Shel Rosh, you put it down, and you then put on the Shel Yad. You don't reverse the order. If by mistake you actually put the Shel Rosh on, the Mishnah Berurah concludes that you don't have to take it off, you just quickly put the Shel Yad on. Continues the Mishnah Berurah. Chaf Gimel. Laha'avir. So he said, you got to just be mitzvahs. You got to just leave the shel rosh there, and you quickly go for the shel yad. Because the Torah says explicitly that you got to put the shel yad on first. We said previously that with tzitzis, if of course you put the talis on first and then you put the tefillin on, and like we discussed yesterday, but if by mistake you take the tefillin out, then you put the tefillin on first and then you put the tzitzis on. Okay, Sif Zayin. Yevorech lehoniach bekomatz tachas hahei. It's lehoniach v'loi befatach, not lehaniach. Ubedogish explains the Mishnah Berurah Sif Kot and Chaf Daled shehu loshen hanocha bekomatz. It's lehoniach. It's a lot of putting on. Kamesh Kosov lehoniach brocha el beisecha, to place a brocha on your home. V'loi befatach, and not with a fatach. Shehu loshen aziva. Kamesh Kosov achichem echod hanichu iti. Leave me. It's a different word. So it's important to stress lehoniach and not lehaniach. Sif Zayin. Kol ha-mitzvahs mevarech aleihim ovel asiyason. All brachas you make ovel asiyason, pirush koidem, immediately before doing it. Like it says in the pasuk, Vayavrei sakushi pirush ratz, v'hiktim lefonav, he ran in front of him. So this is a familiar rule to all of us. You make the bracha bo proetz, and then you eat the apple. You make the shahakal, you drink the drink. Lefichach, so too in these mitzvahs. Tzarech levarech ala tefilah shel yad, v'acha hanocha ala kibaris. You put it on the bicep, the Tefiilin Shel, and then you make a bracha koidem kshiroson. She kshiroson zuhi asiyoson. The kshira of the tefillin, the tying of the tefillin, is the asiyah. That's the main performance of the mitzvah. V'chein b'shel rosh, and so too the shel rosh, says the Ramah, koidem shemahatka b'reisha. You make the bracha, and then you sort of position it in the right place. That's the correct order. The bracha, and then the performance of the mitzvah. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Kot and Chafei, Acha Hanocha, to Kodim Lachen, if you make it too early, it's in the bag still, or you're holding it in your hand, that's too early. Ein Roy Levarech, to have a Kodim to Kodim. It's got to be mitzvahs immediately before you do the mitzvah, but not Kodim to Kodim, not too early. But Tzorech Lekarv HaBracha L'Asiyas HaMitzvah B'chol Madei Efsheh. You've got to try and juxtapose the bracha to the performance of the mitzvah as much as possible. Kodim Kshiros, and in other words, you put the Tefiilin Shel on the bicep, and then you make the bracha, and then you tie it. What if you forgot? You're a bit tired. You put the tefillin on. You tighten it and you wrap it up. So then you make a bracha afterwards. The mitzvah sheyesh la meshech zman hu b'kula yoma, because the mitzvah endures even beyond that time. Kodim shemahadkon, so you put it on your bicep and you make the bracha before you tighten it. It says the Mishnah Berurah in Sif Chav Zayin, ki hahiduk hi mitzvah kshira. Tightening it, that's the mitzvah, and so to the Shel Rosh is talking about. This is going in the Ramah. That's the mitzvah of. It's like the mitzvah of kashira. You make the bracha after you put it in your head. So you don't take the Tefiilin Shel rosh out and then make the bracha. You of course put it on your head and then you make the bracha and then you make sure you put it in the right position. Not like those people who mistakenly make the bracha when it's still in their hand. That's too early. Sometimes it's easy, you take your couple off to put the Tefiilin Shel rosh on, and you make the bracha at that point. You shouldn't. You make sure that your head is covered, your couple or your talis or something is on. Okay, Sif Zayin, Sif Tes. Also lahafsik b'dibur bein Tefiilin Shel Yad Tefiilin Shel rosh. Very important halacha. You mustn't make a hefsik and speak between putting the Tefiilin Shel Yadon and the Tefiilin Shel rosh. V'im hifsik, and if you make some sort of interruption, mevarich al shel rosh al mitzvahs tefillin. You've got to make the bracha again. So according to the Mechaber, where you only have one bracha, al mitzvahs tefillin, you make that on before you put the Tefiilin Shel Yad on. If you make an interruption between the Tefiilin Shel Yad and the Tefiilin Shel rosh, you've got to make the bracha again before you put on the Tefiilin Shel rosh. What about us? Says the Ramah, according to us, Minhag Ashkenaz, Donagin levarach shtei brachas, we make a bracha on the Tefiilin Shel Yad and then again on the Tefiilin Shel rosh. Af im loyev, again if we don't make any interruption, tzorich lachzer v'levarach al shel rosh lohniach v'gam al mitzvahs. So if a person makes a hefsek between the Tefiilin Shel Yad and Shel rosh, before he puts on the Tefiilin Shel rosh, he's got to make two brachas, lohniach and also al mitzvahs. Interesting. Says the Mishnah Berurah. Also lahafsik, afilu b'dibur shel mitzvah, even if it's a mitzvah conversation, going lahoshiv shalom the Rabbi to respond to your Rebbe v'chol ki hai gavna, ki geirim bracha shein tzricha, because you're causing an unnecessary bracha. V'afilu la'isna manichin tefillin v'chol hamoed b'li bracha, even if you're not making a bracha. For example, a person during chol hamoed puts on tefillin without a bracha. That's the Mishnah Berurah's ruling. Or hamanichin tefillin d'Rabbeinu tam, or a person puts on d'Rabbeinu tam tefillin achar shecholat tefillin shel Rashi, where you don't make a bracha. Or shecholat tefillin al manas lachziron, or you're taking off the tefillin in order to put them back on again. If you quickly take your tefillin off to go to the bathroom and then you come back on, or whatever it may be, or whatever that's actually a bad example, because then you do make a new bracha, like we said. But if you make a bracha, you put them on al manas lahachziron, even if there's no bracha, and that's whatever the situation is, you don't make a hefsek between putting the shel yad and the shel rosh on. They should be juxtaposed as close together as possible. It's like one act. But dibur, through speaking, a hefsek is the example he gives is a dibur. Even speaking in Lashon HaKodesh, that's still considered a hefsek. And even to be mafsik b'shtika, if there's a long gap, a long pause, even if you didn't take your mind off it, but a long gap is also to be avoided. Even to indicate with your eyes, to wink or to snap your fingers, you put on the Tefiilin Shel Yad in one house and the Shel Rosh in another house, and that was always your intention. Ayin le'el b'simin ches sif yud gimel of Mishnah Berurah in talis for huadin linyonin. That would apply in our situation as well. V'im hifsik, and if a person was mafsik, afilu b'shegeg, even b'shegeg, l'didon. Now this is going on the Ramah. So nagin to make two brachas. Ki atam she'anu mevarchin shtei brachas al tefillin v'lo yidai bebrachas lo niach levadhu. The reason why us Ashkenazim make two brachas on tefillin and we do not just make lo niach, she'anu soivrim de'ikah tikun habrachas elu kachoisa. That was how we understand the initial establishment of the brachas was on that order. But when you put the Tefiilin Shel Yad on, Chazal decreed that you make the bracha of loniach. For koin nami al shel rosh, and that Loniach is going on the sharosh. That is the gemar mitzvah. Hilkach mimela imsoch v'siach daita tzorich lachzor levorech gam loniach al sharosh. In that situation, you're going to have to make the bracha both. You make the bracha of loniach and al mitzvahs on the rosh if you were mafsik. Just quickly, the numbers 39 and 40. The Dirshu note says, what if a person forgot to make the bracha loniach? And his shahadin hu sheyivarech kol zman she'adayin hu menachas alav. You can still make the bracha so long as you're putting the Tefiilin Shel on you. You can still make the bracha. You got all confused, and you make the bracha the shel rosh first, and then you make the bracha shel yad. You don't do anything. You just carry on as normal. And if you made a mistake, and on the Tefiilin Shel rosh by mistake you made lehoniach tefillin. So he says, the Rabbi Shlomo Zalman says, it's not considered a hefsek, and therefore you don't make a new bracha. Just if you made the wrong bracha. Okay, let's just finish off. Sif Kotan Lamed Beis, Lachzav Levarech V'nochin. In that situation, if you need to make two brachas, what should you do? You sort of agitate the shel yad, you tighten the knot, you pull it, and it's as if the bracha of loniach is going also on the shel yad, and it's as if you've done the shel yad and the shel rosh next to each other, and if you made a bracha without doing that, you can still do mashmesh, you can still move it slightly after the bracha. Okay, we'll leave it there.